Hello and welcome, I hope your coffee is warm. Today we are looking at the top 10 commanders of this month. And we have a lot of these cards from the Blue Burrow precons. I think this is logical because the set is really popular. And first of all we have Miss Bumbleflower, the most popular commander of this month, and for good reason. First of all, she is in colors that are really good with her strategy, and she also has 3 colors, making the deck a little bit more versatile than if she would have, for example, 2 colors and a lot less cards to draw from, of course. Now, other than that, she has a group hug strategy that actually makes your creatures stronger, that actually has a game plan that allows you to win. Let's look at it. So for 4 mana you have a 1/5 that says whenever you cast a spell, target opponent draws a card. Now that's a bit of a drawback, but that's just one of 3 opponents that will draw a card. While eventually, if this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, you draw 2 cards. So you kind of break even, but as you are the one drawing 2 cards and 2 of your opponents draw just 1 card, this is still more beneficial to you. If you do this way more often, I hope you have a game plan with the last piece of this ability, which says put a +1 counter on target creature. It gains flying until end of turn. Meaning you can have a bunch of little creatures, give them all flying, make them just a little bit stronger, and get them all in through the air and defeat your opponents. So this has a game plan. I think that's what people love about this kind of group hug strategy, where you still want to win actually, but also your opponents get to have a lot of more fun, and you do as well. So I think this makes for a really fun game where you are actually a pretty great aggressive deck. Also, people just love drawing cards, they love strengthening creatures, it gives you the feeling of maybe becoming stronger over time, and giving creatures flying, also really great. Other than that, I think you will have to look a little bit at the flavor here, because this is a really cute card of a miss who chose to stay at home actually, while her mother was a really great adventuring pirate for some reason. I don't know if there are seas on Blue Burrow, but she was a pirate maybe on the river, I assume. And Miss Bumbleflower chose to stay at home, caring for the other people, while she could be a flying rabbit. Isn't that an amazing choice? Well, that's just the first creature, because there are other cool creatures. Just a little bit less popular is Bello, the Bard of the Brambles. 3 mana for a goblin-like commander. It says during your turn, each non-equipment, artifact and non-aura enchantment, so they can't really be things that you put on your creatures, basically, you control with mana value 4 or greater is a 4/4 elemental creature in addition to its other types. Now, turning your big enchantments into creatures doesn't seem like a really unique type of game style, but it really is, because you want to play an enchantment deck maybe, or a big artifact deck. You are in green and red, so you usually aren't doing that type of strategy. Maybe enchantments, but definitely not artifacts. And you get to make big creatures out of them, while they still have the effects they have on the battlefield. Now, other than that, the elementals will also have indestructible, so your big enchantments won't die that easily. They have haste, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. And we love drawing cards, as we have seen just a bit before. We especially love drawing cards when we are in Gruul, a color combination that doesn't usually do that as well. Maybe green a little bit lately, and red chaotically by drawing a card just for this turn, but just drawing them is pretty unique, I would say. Also, the archetype here is that Bello is really cute when you love little goblins, and that is on flavor for these colors. So I think that all makes him really popular. Next up is Flubs the Fool. First of all, just look at him. That should be enough. And I think a lot of people who love playing card games also love the fact that this is about tarot cards, another type of way to use cards, of course, but you're still using cards when you're doing tarot. And being the fool in a game is actually one of the most fun things to be. What does Flubs do? You may play an additional land on each of your turns. pretty standard stuff in at least green and probably in Simic. Then whenever you play a land or cast a spell, you draw a card. Now there has to be a drawback here because that would be really overpowered, and it still is, but there is a drawback. If you have no cards in hand, otherwise you discard a card. Meaning, if you have zero expectations of what is going to happen, like the Fool would, then you can draw another card, because the Fool gets into a lot of weird situations because of how he is. He knows exactly where it's going and exactly how he isn't getting there. That's fine. We don't mind. We just love the journey and we don't mind about how we're getting there or if we are not getting there at all. Now, also when you do have cards in hand, you have to discard cards. So that is definitely a drawback, because you will have to stay at just one card. You will have to play it and then you will get another card, of course. But you will just have to play whatever comes from the top of your library. And isn't that really fun? Now there are many ways to break this, of course. So I think that is another reason why Flubs is really popular. And I think lastly, but definitely not leastly, he is called Flubs. So that should already be enough. Next up is Baylen the Haymaker. Now think about hay bales, Baylen, and think about making hay, which you do with the scythe, and this rabbit has a scythe. I think that's pretty funny, but not a reason to play a commander, you would say. Well, maybe. But this commander is also a Naya commander, a color combination many people love, and definitely when they love tokens. This also works with tokens. It says tap 2, 3 or 4 untapped tokens you control. You respectively get 1 mana of any color, so your tokens can help you ramp, which is just one part of the puzzle here. They can help you draw cards, meaning, well, again, we love drawing cards. Or they can put 3 + 1 counters on Baylen and it gains trample until end of turn, meaning it's already a 3 mana 4/3, which is already great, but it gets to be a 7/6, which is a really great body for just 3 mana. You will need 4 untapped tokens, but probably you are making those. And then you can grow your commander and be a sort of Voltron commander as well, as being a great card draw engine and a really great ramp creature card. Now, you will need a lot of tokens, you'd say. That's pretty hard to get, but you can also use treasures or clues. They don't have to be creature tokens for you to tap them. So this works with a lot of weird token synergies, and you can definitely get a lot of tokens out there if you are just playing some treasure or clue strategy. Next up is Zinnia, also from the precons. Again, 3 colors, so that makes it popular already. This one, blue, red, white, should be a sort of control commander, but is more about small creatures in this case. Let's read up on it. It says flying, it's a 1/3 and it gets more power, so you can get in with a lot of damage when you have Zinnia on the battlefield. How does it get more power? It gets +X power, where X is the number of other creatures you control with base power 1. So you want a lot of creatures with base power 1. You can grow them later. So for example, Zinnia still counts as a base 1 power creature when you grow its power from its ability. Now that's one part, but also you could play with really big creatures because of the last ability of Zinnia, saying creature spells you cast have offspring too, meaning you can pay an additional 2 mana to get a 1/1 copy of the creature you are playing. Now one added benefit of this is that you can make a lot of custom offspring tokens for all of your favorite cards and actually play them with this commander. So that already makes this deck really unique. I think 1-power decks are still very sparse, so that makes it unique as well. And we all love enter the battlefield synergies because it means you just have to get the cards onto the battlefield for them to count and be powerful. And of course they are great here because with just 2 mana you get to double the effects of your enter the battlefield effect. So if you only care about that effect, this actually doubles the effect of your creature you're playing already. So I think there are multiple things that we really love about this. Think about the great enter the battlefield effects in red, for example, and you are probably able to think about why this would be really overpowered. Next up is Chatterfang, not really a new card from Bloom Burrow, but does get new art from Bloom Burrow. Now, aside from this, I think Chatterfang wasn't as popular before, but it was still really popular. It's a 3-mana Squirrel with Forest Walk, meaning basically no one can block it, but they do have to have a forest for it to be unblockable, but probably everyone has forest in Commander anyways, who are we kidding? Then, if one or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus that many 1/1 green Squirrel tokens are created instead. And I think that's the most important part, because you can probably storm off with a lot of other cards. For example, if you would be able to sacrifice a token to make a token, that means that you get to sacrifice a Squirrel, make a token, create a Squirrel, and sacrifice the Squirrel to create another one of those tokens, so you are already infinite. Having a commander that's one part of a two-card combo that goes infinite, thus probably wins you the game, is really powerful, and I think that's the biggest part of why it is really popular. But it has gotten a resurgence, and that's partly from the art, but also because of new token synergies from Bloom Burrow, because there are multiple of these green and black commanders that are pretty popular, and all because they really strengthen each other. Speaking about that, we have Ygra, Eater of All, also black and green, also works with tokens. How? Other creatures are food artifacts in addition to their other types, and have pay 2 mana to sacrifice this permanent and you gain 3 life, so they are foods. Whenever a food is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you put 2/+1 counters on Ygra, Eater of All. Now, you would say, what does that have to do with tokens? Well, usually food cards are tokens, so this will work really well with food synergies, but also with the classical archetype of foods. For example, Cauldron Familiar, a 1-mana cat that we probably all know, but I'll tell you anyways. When it ends the battlefield, you drain a life from your opponents. Then you sacrifice a food, for example, Cauldron Familiar, when you have Ygra, Eater of All out on the battlefield, to return Cauldron Familiar from your graveyard to the battlefield. Well, this doesn't really work with Cauldron Familiar itself, but any other food does work. And we have seen this combination work really well with cards that create foods, and anything that would create a creature when you would sacrifice Cauldron Familiar. Basically the same combo you had with Chatterfang, but anything that sacrifices Cauldron Familiar to make any type of creature or food will work as that combo to keep on going with your Cauldron Familiar, and these two cats will win you the game pretty easily. So a little bit of a bigger combo, you will need more cards, but I think this is really fun to people. Also, the heavy aristocrat theme is really fun to many people, of having to sacrifice things a little bit and then going off, storming off, doing little bits of damage everywhere. Now, this is really annoying to many other people, but playing it is pretty fun. So I think that's why it's popular. Next up, this is the 5th time this guy is in here, the Ur-Dragon. 5 colors, 5 times. I think we should stop here, because every time I will have to choose a new thing to tell about these 2 commanders that keep returning every time. This time we're making weapons out of our returning guests. Now, made by Bing, by the way, so not made by myself or anything, but still a really cool weapon, showcasing how the Ur-Dragon is a really spiky dragon, basically. I think the most interesting part here about this weapon is the fact that the wings are in the blades, and you have to think about how sharp that little wing piece is at the end of the biggest part of the axe. So I think that's really interesting, and it also looks a little bit like you could use it as a spear, but I think that's just my imagination. Now next up, Atraxa wanted her own weapon too. She already does. So we made it in her likeness, and it's this. Also featuring the wings. I think just winged creatures are really popular because they have flying, of course. But also angels and dragons are really cool. So those two things made them return 5 times, and we can stop now. I think this is a little bit too holy of a weapon for Atraxa maybe, but let me know what you think about it in the comments. Next up, last but, well, yeah, and least, because it's last, it's Hazel of the Rootbloom, a 4-mana legendary creature. Of course, it has to be legendary. You can tap it to pay 2 life to tap X untapped tokens, again the token synergies. And you add X mana in any combination of colors. Now, you would say, okay, that's better than Baylen because it adds 2 times as much mana for the amount of tokens you have. But you can only do this once, so you can't really storm off with Hazel in that way. I think that's a really big drawback. She has a second ability. It is at the beginning of your end step, you create a token that's a copy of target token you control. So basically populate, but again, you can do it just once. So this is a really great value commander, but not really a strong one. Then if the token is a squirrel, which are usually just 1/1s, instead you create 2 of them. So 2 1/1s. But I think what you will want to do with this is, well, maybe you want a lot of tokens because it will give you more mana. But I think actually what you want to do with this is copying a really big token, and populate is just better at that. So the only niche this card fulfills is the fact that it works with squirrels and can make you mana from squirrels specifically. I think that's why this is the least favorite of the commanders. The other ones are just better. But I think it says a lot about the set that this is still in here. Let me know what your favorite commander from Bloomburrow is. Now we can still think about it before Duskmorn is getting out. And we will probably get new top 10 commanders. Well, maybe not if these stay popular. But let me know which one is your favorite. And I hope you have a nice day. Thank you for watching. Bye.